Hi there, Phoenix aficionados. This is Dan again with an update on the FoenixIDE, which is now at release 0550. Right, so if you go this way, you can see the version. So there's been a lot of changes in the IDE. I mean, it still looks the same overall, but what I've been working on lately is what I call the asset window list. So this is what I'm going to show you today. This integrates the ability to import images and convert them to a format that the machine recognizes, which is essentially a 256 index and then a lookup table for an RGB color. So here we go. So the first example I'm going to show you is, first of all, I want to show you that when we import an image or bitmap into the FoenixIDE, we use the resolution of the machine, in this case the emulator, to determine how wide the bitmap is. So the reason for that is that the machine itself always displays images. So the bitmap layers, there's two of them. So bitmap layers 0 and 1 always show bitmaps in the resolution of the machine. So the way you change the resolution of the machine is by changing the high bit and the double pixel bits in the master control register high byte. Okay, and I'm going to illustrate this. So it's going to be easier to illustrate by looking at it. So what I'm doing here is that I'm going to load an image of there we go, Jumpman, which is a 320 by 240 image. So if I show you the attributes, you will see here, right, 320 by 240. So currently my machine's register is set to the default values, which is 640 by 480. So what you see here is I'm selecting the image to download, which address to copy the image into. It shows me how big the image is in terms of bytes, and then I'm going to tell it to go to store this and interpret it as a bitmap layer 0. Okay, and populate LUT 0, so lookup table 0. It tells me that the extension of the file is BMP, so store. So what this did is that it loaded the BMP, it interpreted the image, so whether it was a 32-bit RGB image or 16 or 24, so the program interprets that and is going to generate a palette out of this. So the Phoenix machine only allows 256 colors in its lookup table, so this is what this did. So here we have the image file here, and we also have a generated lookup table for it, which is stored automatically in this address because that's the LUT0 address. So if you want to see what this looks like, you can play with the master register. I'm going to change the machine to graphics mode and then enable the bitmap. Right, so you can see that the machine now is displaying the bitmap, which is 320 by 240, and the machine itself has 640 by 480 in resolution. So it looks like the image isn't populating the whole screen, and that's because, again, the image was imported to match the resolution of the machine. So when the IDE imports this image, it says, okay, 320 is too small, so I'm going to make each line 640, and then we're just padding it with zeros. Okay. So this asset window here will allow you to actually look at the data, so you can actually look at where the data is stored, and you can page down and see your bits. I mean, there's a lot of black here, so eventually I'll get some values here, but it's very sparse. And same for the lookup table. You can see that the palette file is very small, right? Everything else is 0. So the other thing you can do with this asset window is export your files to either bin or data. So now, like if you had to use the GIMP before, which is a window, it's a basic image manipulation program. If you had to use GIMP to export your BNPs or your PNGs to a bin file and a palette file, well, the IDE now does it for you. So now you can save this, and you can actually use those bin files in your assembly programs or in your C programs and load them directly into the IDE this way, or into the machine. So same for the LUT. So I can save this as a palette file, which it doesn't really matter. Like the extension here is just a convenience, right? It's not. It doesn't mean it's still exporting the file as binary. So, for example, I can go to this palette I just produced and look at it in Ultra Edit or Notepad++, and use the X editor, and you can see like the bytes here are exactly what you saw in the memory window, right? 000 FFF 74. So this is exactly the same. Okay. Okay. So the other example I'd like to show you. So I mean, this is okay, but you know what's actually interesting is that if I change the resolution now to 320 by 240, you'll see that, well, it kind of intersects, like you have a blank line in between everything. So you know what, I'm going to delete this and I'm going to re-import it as a 320, where is it? As a 320 by 240 image, right? Store, and now you see it's actually rendering the image in 320 by 240 because it's not padding the data now with all those zeros. Okay, so this is one example of what you can do. And of course here what's happening is that if you go back to the original resolution, then you'll see some shadow, right? And that just means that the lines, so this image now is 120 lines, and you have half of it here and half of it there. So it's kind of some strange interlacing thing going on. Okay, so this is what's going on with the bitmaps. And another example that I like to play with is I can import PNGs as well. So the Foenix, this image here is fairly complex, and if you look at the properties of the file, you'll see it's 96 pixel and bit depth is 24. So this image is more complex, and the IDE has to actually perform some strange mathematics to be able to render this, because there are actually more than 256 colors in the original image. So now that means I have to decimate the number of colors, but it still renders okay. You know, it's not as good as the original image, but you know, I think it's okay. I might do more work on this later on if I use a color histogram or something and have more accuracy this way, but you know, this was good enough for now. So if you need more accuracy, let me know and I'll get more work done on it. Okay. You can also see that the palette has been populated with more data, right? So you can see that I've used more of the colors of the palette here. Okay. Alright, so another thing I'd like to show you right now, I'm going to turn the bitmaps off. You can also import sprites. So sprites are 32 by 32. So I've got a little piglet here that I'm going to import, and I'm going to say I want this to be sprite 0. And I'm going to store it in, well, so if you try to store this in an address that's already used, you'll get a warning, okay, which is okay, because now that means you'd overwrite this this image here. So I'm going to say no here. I'm going to use a different address to store this, so v1 and store it. Okay, so this middle piglet, and what it did here is that it didn't create a new lookup table because there was probably enough room in this palette here to have the two images coexist. Okay, so, and actually if you go into the file itself, which conveniently doesn't have a whole lot of data, but you'll see that the index of the pixel is higher. It doesn't start at 0 or 1, so the palette is actually adjusted for like we're using colors farther up in the palette. Okay, so how do you render this sprite? Well, so I've turned sprites on, and automatically the IDE will set the sprite to I think it's 0, 0. So you can go see the sprite registers, right? So sprite 1 is enabled, and we're showing it at position 32 by 32, and there's a bunch of blank rows and columns here in this sprite. So now I can try to add another sprite. I think I got two. Which one did I have? Anyway, let's try fall. I'm going to use sprite 1, and I'm going to store this in v2. I could use a different LUT, and then you'll see what happens, right? So the new LUT is at the second position. I got fall here, right? And then it's on top, right? Maybe you can see that too well. So if I go to my sprite registers and I look at sprite 2, you can see, right, it's enabled and it's also using the next palette. And then the position is, well, 32, so 20 in hexadecimal. So I can move this to the right by setting this to 40, and then you'll see them side by side. So the goal here is just to be able to see our sprites, and you know, maybe, you know, like at least you can see that they're imported properly. You can see the palette is okay, and then when you export them to bin and put them in your program, you'll be able to use them. Ultimately, the goal is to be able to do a little bit more than just this. You know, if I was able to, you know, set timers and animate the sprites on screen, that'd be convenient. But there's other programs you can use to do this as well, like ASprite. So, you know, I would suggest you use ASprite, build your sprites, and then transform them with the IDE this way. Okay. All right. So this is it for sprites. So, okay. So the last feature I'd like to show is importing tiles. So I'm going to add another asset. Go by the browser file, and I already have some tile sheets here. So I got one that I've built in, well, somebody built in ASprite and exported to a PNG, and they're 16 by 16 tiles. So I'm going to store it to tile set 0, and I'm going to use let's use LUT2. Let's use 1. All right. Again, I don't want to overwrite my other data, so I'm going to store this in B3. Right. So again, so you know, there you go. This is our tiles, and it doesn't render. So the way you turn on tiles and you actually can generate tile maps is by using the tile editor right here. Okay. So tile editor. So I've got a tile here set to, or tile set to B30. So I'm going to change the address here to B30. Set the strike to 256, and you can see the LUT here is set to 0 by default, and you can see the colors are kind of messed up, right? So what you do is you set the, what did I use for tile? There you go. LUT1, and then the tiles are the right colors. Okay. So next thing you need to do is you need to set, you're going to create a tile map for this, and I'm going to make a tile map of 40 by 30. Right, you enable the tile. Ah, look at that, it's a mess, right? It's ugly. So what's going on with this? So first of all, I'm going to reset my tiles, so clear the tiles. Right, so whatever you pick, so if I decide to clear the tiles with this tile here, which is 35 or 85, right? So 85 is going to be there, and I think I got some lookup table problem. So the reason this is happening actually is that the way the machine renders tiles is that each tile is specified in the tile map. You specify the tile first, and then the next 8 bits are used to specify the lookup table for the color. And really the program isn't doing that right now. It's setting all the colors to, or the lookup table to 0. So as an example, what I'm going to do here is that I'm going to go to this address, so B4, or bank B4. Right, and you can see I got zeros everywhere, but really what I want is a 1 here. So this is something that I haven't done yet in the IDE, and really what we should see, if this works, is that whichever square I set to 1 will use the correct lookup table. So this is something I'm going to fix before I do the final release of this. So in order to deal with this problem right now, I'm just going to re-import the terrain with the LUT0. Okay, so let's do that. So where's my terrain? Right here. Tile set 0, LUT0. So that's going to overwrite the LUT that I've used before. So it might mess up. Oh, I see. It corrected me here, which is good. Right, so I'm going to re-import, and you can see my tiles here. You have to use LUT0. And now if I clear, right now it's black. Okay, so what you use the tile editor for is that you go on your editor, and you're just able to put your tiles in place and draw your map. So because my map here is only 40 by 30, this is the extent of how much I can modify. But really, I think this is good enough to show you what the intent of this is, and then you can start using it to do your own games. So here you have to use the proper tiles, probably this one, or right, because I'm going to do some kind of a corner. Right, continue this, another corner. So laying up a map is pretty quick this way. And now I'm going to fill the inside like this. Anyway, so I'm not going to bore you with some of this, but so the other thing is, what you can do now is you're gonna save it. So when you save, you see you get a tile editor map, and now you can export that. Right, so now you can say, okay, this is a tile map for my game. Right, and again, it's all the export does is that it takes this address, so B4 to B404AF, and it just exports that to a file as binary, and that's it. Okay, so there's obviously a lot more we can do here with the tile editor, but this is something I'm working on, and if you need more features, let me know. So finally, the final thing I want to show you is that there's also the project, which the save project files, or the save project has always been, or it's been in the IDE for quite a while, but what it does now is that it also saves all the assets, right? All the assets, all the memory. So when you save your project, and you see I've saved it already, I'm going to save it to my game. Yeah. So I don't want to use the TLS, I want to use the FNXML extension. So we can go into this file and show you what's in it. First of all, it's an XML file. Where's my game? Right, so it's an XML file, and you're gonna see all the gruesome details that So first of all, it saves the resources, it saves breakpoints if you have them. It's gonna save all the listings, so any program you have in there. So this is quite long, right? All the listing and everything. It's gonna save all the data and really the machine only has 4 megs of RAM data, so saving 4 megabytes into XML is not that big of a deal, and it doesn't save pages that have zeros in them, so it tries to be a little smart about what it saves. Okay, so really what this means is that now I have all this data from the game, so when I kill the editor and I start again, when you load your project, you should be in the same state that you were at when you finished. So of course the tile editor isn't started, but so when you start it again, you'll see, everything you've done so far is still there. Yeah, so that's it for now. I think, yeah, if you have questions, if you need more features, the next thing I'm working on right now is going to be loading an A-sprite formatted file. So that's it should help us accelerate how fast we can develop applications and games for the Phoenix. Okay, so this is in version 0550 of the FoenixIDE, and I'll put a link in the comments so you can go and download it if you like. Okay, talk to you later. Good night.